Nexon's official lawsuit versus Ironmace breakdown.
Yes.
I don't know what this is about.
Okay, so this is a video by Kira. He does all this sort of like breakdown videos on like crypto and gaming and MMOs and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So
who's Nexon?
Nexon
Who's
is
Ironmace?
Okay. They're like, I think Nexon is I can't remember if they're Korean or Japanese or Chinese. Anyways, they're a game developer. They were working on a game called P3. And they did all the, pre-release development, blah, 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 working way through. Well, they had a guy working for them. This was during COVID times. Basically what it is he requested to, they were working on the P3 game. He requested the ability to download the P3 files to his own server to ease working on it, make it faster than doing it through VPN.
Yeah.
And they gave him the go-ahead to do it at the start of the project, which was basically just like them discussing it, with prototype ideas, not really any like working dev builds or anything like that.
Yeah. So
he did that, and then he continued to update his personal server with the files, even after they said, hey, you can't do it anymore. They went away from remote work. Like basically Nexon eventually were like, well, if you can't work efficiently at home, you have to come in the office because we can't have our like proprietary information, spread out like this. He continued to download the information, dev builds and everything.
Yeah.
While he's doing this, he's talking to people that work at Nexon that are working on this game. Like, hey, we should leave Nexon, make our own game company. We can make our own version of this game. We don't need to work with Nexon. We can do our own. I've venture capital. Let's do it. The only reason it came to Nexon's like sort of attention was one of the guys he tried to recruit came to them and was like, hey, he's trying to recruit me to leave to go work for his company and work on a game similar to what we're working on here. So they did a whole check on it, and they fired him basically.
Yeah.
So he left, and then a little while later, within the next 6 months, like 12 other people working on the game left to go work with him on this game that they're working on called Dark and Darker.
Yep.
And they did a whole thing, like I think they did a Kickstarter and it got all funded and everything, and they did it, and all of a sudden the game demo comes out on Steam, like a beta basically.
Yep. And
Nexon did a DMCA on it, had it removed from Steam.
Oh, that's why I couldn't play the demo anymore.
Yeah. Because they basically stole the game from Nexon, and they were like, well, how did they steal the game? So this is the lawsuit breakdown, is how they did it. And basically it was because they didn't have to do any prototyping or any of the pre-production stuff on the game, because they'd already done it when they worked with Nexon. They had all the files, so maybe they didn't copy the game directly, but they could just reference
source code.
Well, no, it wasn't even that. It was like they could reference like, okay, well, why does the lighting look like this? It's like, okay, well, when we first did the game, the lighting was this way, but it didn't work. So that's why we use this style of lighting instead. And like why, they had like in the lawsuit, it's broken down like the similarities of how it was stolen. It's like they use the same 6 classes. The classes have the same abilities. So like the barbarian is the only class that can break down a door.
Yeah.
Same thing in both games. And you think like, well, what is that? Who cares, right? Yeah. That's a barbarian is a strong guy. But it's like every ability is the same. Like only the thief can pick locks. Okay, that is probably the same throughout any other game, really, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, they use the same like Epic Store resources. So like there's 3,000 resources that are the exact same between the two games. So Ironmace is just like, well, they're for sale on the Epic Game Store.
Literally
we just happen to use the same ones. And Nexon's like, well, no, you use the same ones because those are the ones that we were already using.
Yeah.
That you knew what they were and how they were and everything like that. So, and the other thing too is the guy that did this, like this is about them stealing the game, like basically recreating it. And people were like, well, Nexon's just going after the little guys because they have a similar game that they're working on. And it's like, well, no, the guy that did this already admitted that he stole the files. He just said he never used them.
Yeah.
He already said and admitted, like, yeah, I had access and I downloaded them all to my private server. So the lawsuit's about them stealing their intellectual property, basically.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, how can you copyright a fantasy PvPvE game? And they're like, well, you can't really, but unless it's the exact same game, just with a different name, basically.
Yeah.
So that's what this was all about. Very interesting video. I'd recommend it if you search for Kira on YouTube. He does a lot of sort of breakdowns of stuff like that. I watched the video last night. It's like an hour long, and it was just interesting to see. And they have the whole timeline of how it goes, like broken down. Like in March of 2019, we gave him access to download this remotely. In June of 2019, we said he cannot back up the files anymore. He continued to download them like 30 more times. Here's the record of him doing it 30 more times. Blah, 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 blah. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the thing was like the way they spun it. Ironmace was like, "Oh, Nexon's coming after us because we're a small company and we can't defend ourselves and blah blah blah." So a lot of gamers, you know, the gamer type,
Yeah.
are going off about how like, oh, they're just squishing the little guy and how can you do this and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, they literally didn't have to do like 3/4 of the game development, because a part of the thing is Nexon says like, we went from like idea discussion to prototyping to pre-production to production, and like we did play tests and everything like that. And they're like, 90% of games don't get into this point of being built.
Yeah.
They could skip all those steps because we already did it.
Yeah.
They just took what we had done and started like at that point. So it was a very interesting video. I would recommend it. Dark and Darker is never coming out if you're waiting for it. Keep dreaming. I remember it was a big deal for like few days there, and then it was like,
oh yeah, it
gone.
was a huge deal for a few days. Everyone was like, oh my god, you got to play the demo. So I downloaded it, and then I tried to play it the next day, and it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, so Nexon's suing for like losses, basically to recover like all the development costs of this game, because now if they release their own version of it, it's probably not gonna go over well because Ironmace had their version that everyone was loving.
Yeah, I can't even find their version.
No, it's gone.
I can only find
the
Ironmace
Nexon's
version.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, it never came out.
Yeah, but there's nothing, no upcoming, no nothing about
Well, no,
it.
they were still like making it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then they jumped the gun, Ironmace, and did their own, basically exactly the same game. Because Nexon hadn't announced it or anything like that. They were still working on it. So
there you go.
Yeah, very messed up way to operate. So I think they're going to, Buddy's going to go to jail.
Yep.
The lawsuit is in, the lawsuit's in Washington because it was Nexon's, or Ironmace was being distributed through Steam using Amazon Web Services. And basically all these companies that agree to use Steam or Amazon Web Services say that if any lawsuits, or Nexon too, if any lawsuits are involving games or whatever, they have to be filed in America. They can't be filed in like Korea or something like that.
Interesting.
So, yeah. Pretty weird little story.
Yeah. That's silly. Like, why would you even do that? You're going to get caught.
He just thought he could get away with it, basically.
He's an idiot.
Yeah. So.
He's not wise in the ways of the world of getting caught doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, I mean, people are dumb.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
So, anyways.